Imagine everything you've ever been taught about human history being just the tiniest sliver of a much larger story. We're told civilization is only a few thousand years old, that writing, cities and technology are recent milestones. But the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and humans have only been around for a microscopic fraction of that time. Think about it. If the entire lifespan of Earth were condensed into a single year, our entire recorded history would fit into the final seconds of December. That's how brief we've been here. And yet, in that tiny sliver, we've already built skyscrapers, split the atom, traveled into space, and transformed the climate of an entire planet. So here's the question no one likes to ask. What if we weren't the first to do it? There are strange marks carved into the Earth itself, puzzling anomalies that hint at industrial processes, sudden chemical shifts, and scars that shouldn't be there, at least not naturally. Fossil layers that suggest abrupt changes in life and climate, isotopes that look eerily like the leftovers of nuclear reactions, and even peculiar structures buried under ice or locked into orbit far above our heads. To most people, these are just curiosities, oddities explained away by science. But when you connect the dots, the picture that emerges is haunting. It suggests that perhaps long before us, millions of years before, civilizations may have risen, thrived and fallen, leaving behind only whispers. And if that's true, then every fossilized anomaly, every mysterious satellite, every strange chemical trace is not just a mystery of the past, it's a warning for the present. Because if civilizations before us burned out and collapsed, then what does that mean for us? Are we walking the same path blind to the cycle? Or could we be the first to finally see it, the first to break free? That's the unsettling journey we're about to take, one that could change the way you see both the past and our future. When you stop to consider the scale of Earth's history, it's almost impossible for the human mind to fully grasp. We talk casually about millions and billions of years, but the difference between the two is vast beyond comprehension. The Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago, from swirling dust and gas orbiting a newborn sun. That's 4,500 million years of continuous change, of shifting continents, rising mountains and oceans coming and going. Life itself first emerged at least 3.5 billion years ago, clinging to hydrothermal vents and shallow seas, long before anything with eyes, limbs, or thought ever appeared. For almost the entire history of this planet, it was ruled not by people, not even by animals, but by microbes, tiny unseen organisms that multiplied endlessly, shaping the atmosphere, producing the oxygen we breathe, and laying the foundation for everything else that would come. Now compare that with us. Anatomically modern humans have only existed for about 300,000 years. Our species has spent the overwhelming majority of that time hunting, gathering, and living in small groups. With fire as our most advanced technology, civilization, cities, writing, farming didn't even begin until about 10,000 years ago, which is less than the blink of an eye in geological terms. In the modern industrial world, with its skyscrapers, internet, space travel, and nuclear weapons, that's only about 200 years old. If Earth's entire history were compressed into a single 24-hour day, humans wouldn't appear until a couple of seconds before midnight, and all of recorded history, every king, every war, every invention would flash by in less than the blink of an eye. This is where the unsettling thought creeps in. If we've achieved all of this in such a short span, what could have been achieved in the vast stretches of time before us? Hundreds of millions of years passed between the age of the dinosaurs and the rise of humanity. Entire epochs rolled by, with landscapes and climates we can barely imagine. If a civilization had emerged in one of those lost ages, rising and falling long before we ever appeared, how much evidence of it would remain today? The sobering answer is very little. In fact, almost nothing. To understand why, you need to look at how the Earth treats the past. Rocks are constantly recycled through plate tectonics, dragged into the mantle and melted, then pushed back to the surface in volcanic eruptions. Mountains rise and crumble, oceans form and vanish. Even the continents themselves drift and collide, erasing coastlines, burying cities, and creating entirely new landscapes. The vast majority of Earth's surface is younger than the history it holds. The seafloor, for example, is constantly renewed, so the oldest ocean crust is only about 200 million years old. a blink compared to Earth's true age. That means if a civilization had existed in some distant era and built its cities on coastal plains, every trace of them would now be buried deep under the waves or destroyed by geological recycling. Even on land, erosion is relentless. Skyscrapers made of steel and glass might look sturdy today, but in a few thousand years they would collapse, rust, and turn to dust. In 10,000 years, forests and deserts would reclaim them. In 1,000,000 years, glaciers or rivers would scour the land clean, leaving only the faintest traces. In 10 million years, almost nothing would remain, except perhaps a few stubborn anomalies, chemical residues, odd isotopes, or unusual minerals hinting at something unnatural. And in 100 million years, even those would be difficult to detect, hidden under layers of rock and sediment, waiting for a future species to stumble across them. That's the unsettling reality. The Earth is not a museum, carefully preserving every artifact of its past. It is a recycling machine, constantly wiping its surface clean, erasing almost all evidence of anything that once existed. Fossils themselves are rare. Out of the billions of creatures that have ever lived, only a tiny fraction were fossilized, and an even smaller fraction discovered. We construct our knowledge of prehistoric life from a few bones, a few impressions in rock, scattered clues that barely scratch the surface of what once was. If it's this difficult to reconstruct the lives of dinosaurs that roamed the Earth for 65 million years, imagine how impossible it would be to reconstruct the story of a civilization that lasted a few 100,000 years, millions or tens of millions of years ago. This leads to a startling question. How do we know we're the first? We don't. We simply assume it, because no obvious ruins remain. But ruins would not remain. Cities don't fossilize. Highways don't survive tectonic shifts. Satellites don't orbit forever. Over time, all of it vanishes. The only things that might persist are indirect clues, subtle chemical fingerprints, unexplained anomalies in the fossil record, traces of artificial materials fused into stone. In other words, the very kinds of anomalies scientists occasionally find and dismiss as natural oddities. Our perspective is limited by our own arrogance. We think of ourselves as unique, the pinnacle of evolution, the inevitable rulers of this planet, but nature doesn't play favorites. Intelligence could have arisen before, perhaps in forms we cannot even imagine. Maybe it wasn't primates who built the last great civilization, but something reptilian, or avian, or completely alien to our current understanding of biology. Maybe they rose, thrived, and fell, leaving only subtle hints we've mistaken for natural processes. And maybe, just as we are now, they believed themselves invincible, destined to endure, unaware that time was about to erase them. This perspective forces us to reframe our place in the world. Instead of being the first, we might be part of a cycle, a recurring story that has played out again and again across deep time. Civilizations rise, master their environment, change the planet, and eventually collapse. The Earth heals, resets, and waits for the next. We are only the latest chapter in a book much older than we realize, and the real question isn't whether others came before, but whether we will leave behind anything meaningful for those who come after. Will we be just another whisper in the rocks, another faint anomaly mistaken for a quirk of geology? Or will we be the first to break the cycle, to endure long enough to leave a permanent mark that no amount of time can erase? The unsettling scale of Earth's history reminds us how fragile we really are. Our civilizations, our monuments, even our species are temporary. The planet endures, time erases. And if we truly believe we are the first, we may already be falling into the same trap as those who came before, blind to the possibility that our story is not unique, but just another loop in the endless spiral of history. When scientists peel back the layers of the Earth, they are not just looking at stone, they are looking at a record book. Each layer tells a story about what the world was like at that time, what the atmosphere held, what lived, what died, and sometimes what burned. Sedimentary layers are like pages stacked on one another, each one pressed down over millions of years. Fossils, chemical traces, isotopes, and minerals form the ink, subtle hints of how the planet shifted and changed. But every now and then, something strange shows up, a line in the record that doesn't read like the rest. These are the geological whispers, anomalies that resist easy explanation, shadows that might be natural or might be something far less ordinary. Consider the concept of the Anthropocene, the proposed new epoch of geological time defined by human influence. Future geologists, millions of years from now, will see clear signatures of our existence in the rocks. Plastic fragments fused into stone, sometimes called plastic glomerates, a brand new geological material born of synthetic polymers. They will see spikes in carbon dioxide and methane, greenhouse gases layered thick in the ice and sediments. They will see artificial isotopes, like plutonium, scattered across the globe from nuclear tests. These are signals no natural process produced. They are the fingerprints of industry, of technology, of a species that has reshaped its planet. Now here's the disturbing thought. We already find signals like these in far older rock. Geologists sometimes stumble upon carbon spikes in strata dating back tens of millions of years. Sudden, sharp increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide that do not always match volcanic eruptions or asteroid impacts. Sometimes they line up with known events, but other times they seem oddly out of place, as though something else was driving them. There are also anomalies in nitrogen levels, in oxygen ratios, and in the distribution of heavy metals that suggest processes we don't fully understand. Could some of these be the whispers of industries long gone, civilizations that burned fossil fuels, altered their climates, and vanished, leaving only chemical scars behind? Mainstream science doesn't interpret them that way, of course. But if you didn't know humans existed, would our chemical fingerprints look natural either? One particularly intriguing example comes from what scientists call the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, or PET-M, about 56 million years ago. During this event, global temperatures spiked dramatically, the oceans acidified, and massive extinctions follow. The cause, we are told, was a sudden release of carbon, perhaps from volcanic activity, perhaps from methane hydrates melting in the ocean floor. But here's the problem. The scale and speed of the carbon release looks suspiciously similar to what we're doing right now with industrial activity. Could it be natural? Absolutely. But it could also be exactly what our era will look like in the far future, an anomalous carbon spike that future scientists might puzzle over, debating whether it was natural or caused by intelligent beings. And if that's true of us, could it not also be true of them? Another whisper comes from strange chemical deposits. There are layers of rock where unusual isotopes appear, compounds that resemble the byproducts of combustion or industrial chemistry. Some researchers have noted odd concentrations of synthetic-looking hydrocarbons preserved in shale, far older than humanity. These are explained as natural fossil fuels formed over millions of years. But what if some of those deposits aren't just natural accidents of geology, but leftovers of ancient industries, burned and buried long before our time? After all, oil and coal themselves are limited resources. If another civilization tapped into them millions of years ago, might the strange gaps and distributions of these fuels reflect their consumption? Just as future geologists might wonder why so much of Earth's fossil fuels vanish in the blink of a geological eye during our era, then there are mass extinctions themselves. Many of them are attributed to impacts, volcanic outpourings, or climate shifts. But the suddenness of some die-offs, the speed with which species disappear, the dramatic reshaping of excess, looks eerily similar to what we're seeing unfold today under human influence. The sixth extinction, they call it. But what if it isn't the sixth? What if it's the 10th or the 15th, with earlier ones driven not just by asteroids or volcanoes, but by civilizations that pushed their worlds too far? The rocks don't tell us who or what caused the change, only that it happened. To a species millions of years in the future, our own fingerprints might look no different. There's also the issue of metals. Modern industry leaves behind peculiar distributions of rare elements, aluminum, lead, chromium, and synthetic alloys that don't form naturally. Today we scatter them everywhere, embedding them in soils, waterways, and even the atmosphere. But in older rocks, there are deposits that look curiously out of place, concentrations of metals that geologists struggle to explain. Could these be natural? Certainly, but some are so unusual, so anomalous, that they raise eyebrows. If they had been left by a civilization long before us, would we recognize them as such? Or would we dismiss them the way we often dismiss anomalies that don't fit the accepted narrative? And then there's the silence. The fossil record is full of gaps, periods where life seems to thin, ecosystems collapse, and then recover in new forms. These are attributed to natural events, but the possibility lingers that some of these collapses might have been driven by intelligence. by beings who altered their world beyond repair. If they were here, their stories would now be whispers in stone, indistinguishable from natural disasters. That's the great trick of time. It doesn't preserve, it erases. The whispers of geology are powerful because they are ambiguous. They don't shout their meaning. They don't hand us clear evidence of past civilizations. Instead, they leave riddles, puzzles, strange scars that make us pause. If we were to vanish tomorrow, our legacy would one day look the same. Carbon spikes, isotope anomalies, fossilized plastics, curious concentrations of metals, and a sudden extinction of countless species. To whoever came next, these would be geological whispers of us. They might argue over whether they were natural or artificial, just as we argue over the anomalies of the deep past. That is the unsettling symmetry. We are not looking at the past as detached observers. We are looking at a mirror of our own future. The chemical fingerprints we leave now are the same kinds of fingerprints we puzzle over in ancient rocks. The mysteries we find in the strata might not be mysteries at all, but warnings telling us in their faint geological language, we were here once, we burned too hot, we vanished. Learn from us. But the question remains, will we listen, or will we dismiss them as quirks of nature, only to leave our own whispers for someone else millions of years from now to puzzle over, repeating the cycle yet again? When we think of fossils, we imagine bones perfectly preserved in stone, skeletons reconstructed in museums, or strange impressions of shells pressed into rock. But the truth is far less complete and far more fragile. Fossils are rare, accidental miracles of preservation, and the fossil record is less like a library and more like a handful of scattered notes. Out of the billions of creatures that once lived, only a tiny fraction left behind remains that survived the erosion, the tectonic shifts, and the grinding passage of time. The result is that our picture of Earth's history is stitched together from fragments, with vast stretches of time left almost blank. These gaps are where the imagination begins to whisper, because what might have lived and what might have thrived could be lost to us forever. The fossil record tells us that life on Earth has existed for billions of years, evolving through countless forms, yet our direct knowledge comes from narrow windows, scattered and incomplete. Entire continents of fossils have been ground to dust by glaciers, buried beneath oceans or destroyed by volcanic fire. Even the most famous fossil beds, places like the Burgess Shale or the La Brea tar pits, represent only slivers of ecosystems, snapshots caught in moments of extraordinary love. What we don't see is the overwhelming majority, the species, the creatures, and possibly even the civilizations that vanished without leaving a trace. If even bones, shells, and teeth rarely survive, how much less would the fragile artifacts of a thinking species survive after tens of millions of years? One of the great mysteries of paleontology is the suddenness with which life sometimes disappears. Mass extinction events stand out as stark lines in the fossil record, where one layer is full of life and the next is empty, a sharp boundary between flourishing ecosystems and barren wastelands. Sometimes these events can be linked to known catastrophes, like the asteroid impact that ended the reign of the dinosaurs. But not all of them have such clear causes. Some extinctions unfold in ways that feel abrupt and puzzling, as though something swept across the planet and left silence behind. The Permian-Triassic extinction, often called the Great Dying, is one of the most dramatic examples. About 252 million years ago, over 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrates vanished. The causes are still debated: massive volcanism, methane release, or some other cascading effect. But the sheer scope and suddenness of the collapse are staggering. If a civilization had existed then, its disappearance would look in the fossil record exactly like this. Sudden, sweeping loss of diversity, a crash of ecosystems, followed by millions of years of slow recovery. Without clear artifacts, how would we ever know the difference between a natural disaster and a self-inflicted one? Even outside of extinction events, the gaps are troubling. There are long stretches of geological time where fossils are scarce or absent, periods where we know life must have been thriving but we have almost no record of it. These fossil gaps are explained by the imperfect conditions needed for preservation. They also leave open enormous possibilities. If complex life had flourished in those eras, if intelligence had emerged, we might never see it in the fossil record. Soft tissues decay, bones dissolve, and most traces of existence vanish long before they can fossilize. Civilization made of wood, stone, or even metals would fare no better. After millions of years, there might be nothing left to identify. The Cambrian explosion roughly 100 million years ago highlights another mystery. Before it, the fossil record is sparse, with few complex organisms preserved. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, an explosion of diversity appears. Dozens of new body plans, sudden complexity, rapid evolution. To us it looks like life accelerating without warning. But what if our perspective is skewed by what hasn't survived? What if there were stages, experiments, or even intelligent species that arose before, wiped away without fossils to tell their story? We see only what is preserved, not what actually happened. This is where the whispers become louder. If the fossil record is so incomplete, then how confidently can we say intelligence never arose before us? The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It is simply silence. And silence is exactly what we should expect if entire civilizations were erased millions of years ago. Their bones, their tools, their buildings, all lost to erosion, subduction, and decay. All that might remain are anomalies, a sudden extinction, a chemical scar, a strange deposit of metals or isotopes. To us, these would look like quirks of geology. To them, they would have been the end of everything. Even the fossil record of humanity itself shows how fragile memory is. Out of billions of people who lived before us, only a handful of skeletons remain from our earliest ancestors. The famous Lucy, the Australopithecus, is a rare treasure, but she represents just one individual among countless others who vanished without a trace. Entire cultures, tribes, and peoples disappeared without leaving anything behind that could survive deep time, and that is in the recent past, with only a few million years separating us. Stretch that to 100 million years, and the silence becomes absolute. Another way to think about it is through comparison. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth for 65 million years, yet what do we really know of them? A few skeletons, a few trackways, impressions of skin, hints of feathers. We still argue about whether they were warm-blooded, whether they had complex social lives, how they sounded, how intelligent they were. And this is with tens of thousands of fossils in hand. If an intelligent species of dinosaur existed, say one that built tools or developed a culture, how would we know? Unless they left behind something extraordinary that managed to fossilize, their story would be invisible to us, hidden in the gaps. We would dismiss them as just another creature in the endless churn of evolution. The fossil gaps, then, are not just empty pages, they are voids, where entire chapters of Earth's history may have been written and erased. We assume those chapters were filled only with simple life, but that assumption rests on nothing but silence. It is just as plausible in the absence of evidence that complexity and even intelligence has risen and fallen many times before. We may be the first to ask the question, but that doesn't mean we are the first to live the answer. This perspective shifts how we should see ourselves. Instead of unique, we are provisional. Instead of inevitable, we are fragile. We live on a planet that erases nearly everything, where even the bones of giants vanish into dust, where history is rewritten every time continents move or seas rise. Our own story too will one day fall into the gaps, preserved only if chance and circumstance align. Future species, if any exist, may look at the silence where we once thrived and wonder if something more once lived here, just as we do now when we stare at the gaps of the past. The fossil record then is not proof that we are the first. It is only proof that the Earth is good at forgetting. And in those forgotten ages, between the lines and inside the gaps, there may be ghosts. Ghosts of civilizations, ghosts of stories like ours, whispers waiting for us to listen. In the heart of Gabon, West Africa, lies one of the strangest geological mysteries ever uncovered. In the 1970s, scientists studying a uranium mine in Uklo stumbled upon something that defied expectations. The uranium ore being extracted showed unusual patterns. Specifically, the isotope uranium-235, the fuel used in nuclear reactors, was present in lower concentrations than expected. Not just slightly lower, but dramatically so, enough to suggest that the uranium had already been burned. It looked as if part of the deposit had undergone sustained nuclear fission long ago. To put it simply, the mine appeared to have once been a nuclear reactor. The official explanation is that this was a natural phenomenon, a rare but theoretically possible chain reaction triggered 2 billion years ago, when conditions were just right. Water seeped into the deposit, acting as a moderator, and the uranium concentration was high enough to sustain a reaction. The reactor ran intermittently for hundreds of thousands of years before shutting down. On paper it works, The physics check out. It's a story that comforts scientists because it fits neatly into natural laws. But when you step back, the implications are unsettling. A natural nuclear reactor sounds like something you'd expect in science fiction. It requires delicate conditions, precise balances, and a kind of accidental engineering by geology. Yes, it's possible, but is it the only explanation? Some researchers and curious thinkers have asked whether Oklo might not be entirely natural. What if, instead of a geological accident, it was the remnant of something artificial, a reactor built not by accident but by intention, by a civilization long gone? Think about what nuclear waste looks like in our world. We bury spent fuel rods deep underground, encase them in protective containers, and hope they last for millennia. But given enough time, even those containers will corrode, and all that will remain is a scar in the rock. Unusual isotope ratios, depleted uranium levels, and traces of fission products. If someone millions of years in the future dug into such a site, they would find exactly what scientists found in Oklo, a geological puzzle that looks suspiciously like a nuclear reactor. From their perspective, the line between natural and artificial would blur, because time erases the fingerprints of intent. This is what makes Oklo so fascinating in the context of lost civilizations. It's not just a quirky story about a natural anomaly, it's a mirror. If our civilization collapsed tomorrow, one of the most enduring signatures we'd leave behind would be nuclear. Long after steel rusted, glass shattered, and plastic degraded, nuclear waste would remain, buried in stone, detectable in isotopic anomalies. The problem is, those anomalies would look almost identical whether they were natural or artificial. For us today, Oklo looks like a natural phenomenon, but if there were reactors millions of years ago, they would look exactly the same. The only difference would be intent, and that is something geology cannot record. The Oklo site isn't the only place that raises eyebrows. Around the world, there are uranium deposits with unusual isotope distributions, not quite as dramatic as Gabon, but still intriguing. Each one is explained as natural variation, but together they create a pattern worth questioning. Add to this the strange, unexplained surges of radiation sometimes recorded in rocks, as though something once burned hotter than it should have, and you begin to wonder how many anomalies we've dismissed as accidents, because the alternative is too unsettling to consider. Even outside uranium, there are other nuclear enigmas buried in Earth's crust. Isotopic signatures of elements like technetium and promethium, which have no naturally occurring stable isotopes, sometimes show up in trace amounts. These are elements that normally only appear in reactors or particle accelerators, decaying quickly into other forms. When they are detected in nature, they are explained as fleeting products of uranium decay chains. But what if, in some cases, they are whispers of technology long gone? A particle accelerator millions of years ago would leave no machines behind, no tunnels or magnets, only isotopic ghosts faintly etched into rock. To us, they would look like quirks of chemistry. To those who created them, they were milestones of science. The nuclear enigma also forces us to ask how we would appear in the fossil record. Imagine a million years from now, after we've long vanished, a future species drills into the ground and finds odd concentrations of cesium, strontium, plutonium, materials that don't occur naturally. To them it would be a mystery. Did nature create them, or did someone else? Without direct artifacts, they would never know. The line by natural and artificial becomes invisible when stretched across deep time. That's why Oklo is such a perfect example. It reminds us that even something as dramatic as nuclear technology, which feels so uniquely human, might vanish into ambiguity given enough years. Skeptics argue that if a past civilization had built nuclear reactors, we would see more evidence: tools, structures, ruins. But this assumes we understand how time erases. It assumes we recognize what evidence to look for. 2 billion years is an inconceivable length of time. Entire continents have risen and vanished in that span. Mountains have been built and destroyed. Oceans have shifted across the globe. If there had been cities near Oklo, they would now be gone, ground into dust, subducted beneath tectonic plates, or buried beyond reach. The only thing that could survive would be the isotopic scars, the same scars we explain as natural. This possibility forces us to widen our imagination. If there were civilizations before us, they may not have been like us at all. They might not have built cities of steel and glass. They might not have used energy the way we do. But if they did reach nuclear technology, if they split the atom and harnessed fission, then their legacy would look exactly like what we see in Gabon. A strange depletion of uranium, fission products that shouldn't be there, and a story that sounds too much like ours to ignore. Even if Oklo was natural, it still holds a profound lesson. It shows us how easily the traces of something extraordinary can be hidden within geology, how indistinguishable artificial and natural can become when viewed across eon. It warns us that if we collapse, our nuclear legacy may one day be dismissed the same way. Future beings may find our waste, our scars, and chalk it up to geology, never realizing that a species once existed that mastered the atom, then destroyed itself. The nuclear enigma is not about proving that there were reactors before us. It's about realizing how fragile proof itself is, how the Earth erases intent and leaves only whispers, how even the most advanced technologies we can imagine may one day be nothing more than anomalies in stone, debated endlessly, never conclusively understood. And that's the unsettling truth. Whether Oklo was natural or artificial, it shows us that if civilizations have come and gone before, we may never truly know. The only evidence would be whispers like these, faint and ambiguous, buried in the rock, waiting for us to find them, and wonder if we too are destined to become nothing more than another enigma in the deep time of Earth. If our civilization ended tomorrow, what would remain of it in 10,000 years? A few ruins scattered in deserts, skeletal towers reclaimed by vines, the faint outlines of highways beneath layers of dust. In 100,000 years, those same ruins would be almost unrecognizable, reduced to rubble and sediment. In 1,000,000 years, the continents themselves would have shifted, glaciers would have ground landscapes flat, and nearly everything we've built would be erased. But something would remain, not buildings, not monuments, but chemical ghosts. The true legacy of our industry will not be stone or steel, but invisible signatures buried in Earth's layers, waiting to be discovered by whoever or whatever comes next. Already we can see what these ghosts look like. Plastics, for instance, are everywhere. They are in the oceans, in the soil, even in the air we breathe. Tiny fragments, microplastics, infiltrate ecosystems and fossilize into sediments. In some parts of the world, geologists have already discovered a new kind of rock, plastiglomerate, a strange hybrid of natural material fused with melted plastic. Imagine millions of years from now when layers of stone are cut open and studied. These plastigglomerates will be there, immortalized as a geological marker of our time. They will say, without words, that there was once a species that invented synthetic polymers and used them so recklessly they reshaped the very crust of the Earth. And plastics are just the beginning. Synthetic chemicals, from pesticides to pharmaceuticals, already saturate our environment. Compounds like PCBs and DDT, long banned, still linger in soils and water, stubbornly refusing to degrade. Heavy metals leach into rivers, industrial pollutants seep into bedrock, and radioactive isotopes spread through ecosystems. Each of these will leave its mark, millions of years from now, when natural decay has erased every building and bone. These chemical fingerprints will still whisper of us. To future geologists, they will look like sudden, inexplicable anomalies. To us, they are simply the inevitable byproduct of industry. Now imagine flipping that perspective. Suppose another civilization rose millions of years before us and industrialized in their own way. Suppose they too filled their world with synthetic compounds, heavy metals, and strange isotopes. Their factories, their cities, their machines would all be gone now, but their chemical ghosts might remain, faint anomalies in rocks and sediments. The odd spikes of carbon, the traces of pollutants, the isotopic ratios that don't fit natural explanations. These are exactly the kinds of things we sometimes find, exactly the kinds of whispers that spark curiosity. We explain them away as volcanic activity or natural accidents, but what if some are not? What if they are the ghosts of industry, the only surviving proof of civilizations long gone? Consider fossil fuels. We are burning through them at an astonishing rate, releasing ancient carbon back into the atmosphere. In the far future, the rocks will show this as a sharp spike of carbon dioxide, a chemical line across the strata that screams of sudden unnatural change. Already we have a name for such spikes in the past: carbon excursions. They are moments in geological history when carbon levels soared and climate shifted. Some are explained by volcanic activity, some by methane release, but others are less clear, their causes mysterious. Could one or more of these past excursions have been industrial in origin? Could they be the fossilized breath of machines that once roared millions of years before us? It's not just carbon. Our industries release nitrogen compounds, chlorofluorocarbons, and countless synthetic molecules unknown to nature. Many of these persist for extraordinary lengths of time, embedding themselves into the environment. Even if our civilization collapsed, they would linger as markers. And if we find similar oddities in ancient rocks, molecules that don't seem natural, isotopes that don't quite fit, we should ask whether they too might be remnants of industries we can no longer imagine. The unsettling truth is that we've already uncovered such anomalies. Geological layers sometimes contain compounds that don't neatly fit into natural processes. Strange hydrocarbons, peculiar isotopic ratios, unexplained spikes of elements like lead or mercury. Our explanations rely on natural disasters, volcanic eruptions, or asteroid impacts. And maybe that's true, but maybe those anomalies are the ghosts of industries older than memory, faint traces of technologies erased by time. Even our waste could echo across the ages. Landfills today are mountains of future fossils, layers of compressed plastic, metal and glass that will eventually fossilize into strange strata. When rivers cut through them millions of years from now, they will expose colorful seams of artificial material, completely unlike anything natural. They will stand as undeniable evidence that a species once lived here, even if every city has long since turned to dust. But if that is true for us, it may also be true for others before us. Somewhere beneath our feet, buried deep in forgotten layers, there may be fossilized landfills of a different age, strata of materials we can't yet recognize, because they belong to industries built on chemistries we don't understand. The eerie thing about chemical ghosts is how subtle they are. They do not announce themselves. They hide in the background, in ratios of isotopes, in peculiar mineral formations, in the invisible details of stone. If you don't know what you're looking at, you dismiss them as quirks of nature. That's what we do today when we find anomalies in ancient layers. We explain them as accidents, coincidences, oddities, and maybe they are. But if there were civilizations before us, this is exactly how their existence would appear, as ghosts in the rocks, whispers mistaken for natural noise. It forces us to ask a haunting question. Are we already holding the evidence of ancient civilizations in our hands, but failing to recognize it? Are the anomalies we study in geology textbooks not natural curiosities, but faint signatures of industry long erased? Could the past be speaking to us through chemical scars while we remain deaf to its message? Our own era offers the clearest warning: the ghosts of our industry are already everywhere. Plastics will fossilize, nuclear isotopes will linger for billions of years, carbon spikes will scar the atmosphere, metals will form unnatural concentrations, pharmaceuticals and pesticides will embed themselves into soils. These are our whispers, our legacy, the marks we are leaving behind for the future. If we vanish, they will be all that remain. And one day, if another species rises, they will find them and ask the same questions we are asking now. Who left this behind? Were they like us? What happened to them? The ghosts of industry remind us that civilizations do not vanish without leaving traces. But those traces are not monuments or ruins. They are chemical scars written in the language of geology. We may not yet know how to read them, but they are there, waiting. And as we confront our own footprint, we must wonder whether we are not only creating our legacy, but also uncovering someone else's. Two stories layered in stone, ours being written now, theirs hidden in the past, both fragile, both haunting, both destined to become whispers in the endless memory of Earth. At the bottom of the world lies a continent that most of us never think about. Antarctica is a vast frozen desert, a place of brutal cold and endless ice, a place that seems more alien than earthly. But beneath its thick white blanket, secrets hide, secrets locked away for millions of years. When you look at Antarctica today, you see glaciers, ice shelves, and barren landscapes. But what's buried beneath? is a mystery so profound that it has fueled decades of speculation. Beneath the ice lies a landmass the size of the United States and Mexico combined, containing mountains, valleys, and even ancient lakes, sealed off from the surface for millions of years. It is here that many believe evidence of the past, perhaps even evidence of forgotten civilizations, could be waiting. Scientists know that Antarctica wasn't always frozen. In fact, not so long ago, in geological terms, it was green. Fossilized plants, petrified forests, and even dinosaur remains have been found there, proving that it once hosted lush ecosystems. During the Eocene epoch, around 40 million years ago, Antarctica was a warm, forested paradise, home to creatures we can scarcely imagine walking across the land today. Later, as the climate cooled and ice spread, the continent became entombed beneath glaciers up to 3 miles thick. That ice is both a prison and a vault. It erases the surface but also preserves what lies beneath, locking away landscapes untouched since long before human civilization ever appeared. Modern technology has allowed us to peek through the ice using ground-penetrating radar and satellite imagery. What has been revealed is astonishing. Beneath the ice are mountain ranges as dramatic as the Alps, deep valleys carved by rivers, and entire subglacial lakes, some of which may have been isolated for tens of millions of years. One of the most famous is Lake Vostok, a massive body of liquid water buried under more than 2 miles of ice. For millions of years, it has been sealed away from the outside world, its waters untouched, its ecosystem hidden. Scientists believe life may exist there, but not just simple bacteria, potentially entire ecosystems of unique organisms that have evolved in isolation since the age of dinosaurs. If such life exists, it would be like a time capsule, showing us what ecosystems looked like millions of years ago. But some thinkers push the idea further. If life has survived under the ice, who's to say remnants of civilization couldn't also be preserved there? Adding to the intrigue are the strange anomalies detected by satellites. Certain regions of Antarctica show geometric patterns beneath the ice, shapes that seem too orderly, too structured to be natural. The most famous example is near the coast of East Antarctica, where radar images reveal what looks like a buried structure with straight lines and sharp angles. Official explanations attribute these to natural geological formations, perhaps ridges or crevasses shaped by ice movement. But to those who look with more imagination, the patterns resemble buildings, ruins entombed beneath ice for millennia. The question lingers, could Antarctica hide not just natural history, but human or even pre-human history? Compounding the mystery are the countless myths and conspiracy theories that have grown around the frozen continent. Some claim that maps from the Renaissance, like the Piri Reis map, depict parts of Antarctica free of ice, suggesting that someone in the distant past had knowledge of the continent before it was discovered in modern times. Others point to stories of expeditions that supposedly encountered forbidden zones, or strange findings that were quickly suppressed. While much of this veers into speculation, it reflects the deep unease Antarctica inspired, because if there is any place on Earth where evidence of a forgotten chapter of history could survive undisturbed, it would be here, locked away under ice that no one can easily penetrate. And the truth is, we've barely scratched the surface. Only a fraction of Antarctica has been studied in detail. Most of the continent is unexplored, covered by ice sheets so thick that drilling through them would take decades. What's more, international treaties limit activity there, restricting what can be done under the guise of preservation and scientific research. Some see this as noble, others as suspicious, wondering if secrets are being kept deliberately hidden. After all, if a discovery were made under the ice, something that challenged everything we know about history, would we even be told? Or would it vanish into classified reports, hidden from public eyes? The allure of Antarctica is that it feels like the ultimate vault of lost history. Unlike other parts of the world, it hasn't been eroded by human settlement, agriculture, or war. Whatever is buried there has been sealed for millions of years. That means it could hold fossils of creatures we've never known, remnants of climates we don't understand, and perhaps even traces of civilizations erased elsewhere, but preserved here by sheer accident. If an advanced culture once thrived on Earth before us, Antarctica could be the one place where evidence survived the march of time. Even natural discoveries there border on the extraordinary. Scientists have found meteorites preserved in the ice, untouched since they fell from space. They've drilled cores that reveal ancient atmospheres trapped in bubbles, giving us snapshots of the air from hundreds of thousands of years ago. These are ordinary scientific treasures, but they hint at what else might be locked away. If rocks and air can be preserved for that long, why not something more? Why not a ruin, a relic, a fossil that changes the story of humanity forever? And then there are the more dramatic whispers, rumors of hidden bases, of military expeditions finding more than they expected, of strange technologies buried beneath the ice. While these often come from fringe sources, they resonate because they tap into a deeper truth. Antarctica is still unknown. It is the last blank space on the map, a place we cannot easily access, and where anything might lie hidden. That uncertainty fuels speculation, because when the world feels mapped and explained, a place like Antarctica reminds us how little we really know. What makes Antarctica particularly haunting in the context of forgotten civilizations is how perfectly it could preserve a secret. Imagine if a city had once stood on its green plains millions of years ago before the ice advanced. When the glaciers came, they would have swallowed it whole, grinding some of it into rubble, but also sealing parts of it away in ice. Over time, the world forgot, and all that remained was a frozen tomb. Today, our satellites scan its surface and pick up anomalies that look geometric, but we shrug them off as natural. Yet what if they're not? What if they are the ghosts of a lost epoch, waiting to be uncovered when the ice finally retreats? Antarctica is a paradox. It is the most desolate, inhospitable place on Earth, yet it may be the most important for unlocking our forgotten past. It is a continent that erases but also preserves, that hides but also teases with hints of what lies beneath. Every fossilized tree, Etit radar anomaly, every subglacial lake is a reminder that the story of Earth is far older, far stranger, and far less complete than we admit. The ice is not just frozen water, it is a veil, a curtain drawn across history, and like all curtains, it will not stay closed forever. The real question is not whether Antarctica hides secrets, but whether we are ready for them. Because if something is down there, something that challenges the official timeline of human history, then uncovering it would force us to confront truths we might not be prepared to face. Were we really the first? Or are we just the latest in a line of civilizations, each rising, falling, and being swallowed by the Earth, leaving only whispers frozen in ice? Antarctica may one day give us that answer. Until then, it remains the great white enigma, a silent witness to ages we can barely imagine, keeping its secrets buried under miles of ice and time. When we gaze up at the night sky, we often think of it as a window into the unknown, a place untouched by the rise and fall of civilizations. But what if the opposite is true? What if space itself holds the most enduring record of civilizations that came before us? Not on Earth, but on its nearest neighbors. Mars and the Moon have long captivated human imagination, not just because they are close, but because they seem strangely familiar. They are barren, lifeless, and desolate today, but both worlds carry scars, features and mysteries that make some wonder if they are more than just silent rocks orbiting in the void. They may be archives of the deep past, time capsules preserving evidence of stories that Earth itself has erased. Mars, in particular, has fascinated scientists and dreamers alike for centuries. Even through primitive telescopes, early astronomers saw strange markings on its surface. Some thought they were canals, evidence of intelligent life carving waterways across a dry world, while modern science has explained those early observations as optical illusions. The fascination never died. Today, with high-resolution imagery from orbiters and rovers crawling across its soil, the mysteries have only deepened. We now know Mars was once far wetter than it is today. Riverbeds snake across its surface, deltas fan out into dried-up basins, and minerals only formed in water are scattered across the planet. Billions of years ago, Mars may have looked more like Earth, with oceans, rivers, and possibly even habitable conditions. If life could have existed there, could it also have advanced? Could Mars have hosted not just microbes, but a civilization long before Earth was ready to support one? What makes Mars compelling is not just the evidence of water, but the peculiar features that seem too precise, too deliberate, to be entirely geological. The so-called face on Mars, photographed by Viking 1 in 1976, is one of the most famous examples. At first glance, it looks like a colossal carved visage, staring upward from the Cydonia region. Later, higher resolution images revealed it to be a mesa shaped by natural erosion. Yet even with better photos, the fascination persists. The human brain is wired to find patterns, but sometimes the patterns are so striking that they stir questions. Nearby, other structures appear pyramid-like, arranged in ways that some interpret as deliberate. Mainstream science dismisses these as natural formations, products of wind and time, but the allure remains. If an advanced culture had once existed on Mars, its ruins would not necessarily be intact temples or skyscrapers. They would be eroded mounds, half-buried structures, and strange geometries that we mistake for coincidence. Rovers exploring the Martian surface have added fuel to the fire. Images of peculiar rock formations resembling artifacts have sparked debates online. A fragment that looks like a piece of machinery, a shape resembling a statue, an object that looks like a shard of metal. Each has been explained as pareidolia, our tendency to see meaning in randomness. But pareidolia cannot erase the deeper question. If Mars once supported oceans, if it once had the right conditions, why couldn't something more than microbes have evolved there? And if they did and their civilization collapsed billions of years ago, what would remain now but rocks, eroded shapes and faint chemical whispers in the soil? Then there is the Moon, Earth's silent companion. Unlike Earth, the Moon has no atmosphere, no weather, no plate tectonics. It does not erase its past. Every scar of impact, every trace of activity remains preserved indefinitely. That makes it a natural archive, a time capsule stretching back billions of years. If intelligent life ever visited Earth in the distant past, or if civilizations before ours reached into space, the Moon would be the perfect place to leave evidence. Unlike Earth, it would not bury or erase it. Artifacts could lie untouched on its surface for eons, preserved in the vacuum, shielded by nothing but silence. Even in modern times, the Moon has sparked speculation. Images from lunar missions show strange anomalies, structures that some interpret as artificial domes, towers, or bases, while mainstream explanations attribute these to shadows, natural features, or image artifacts. The idea lingers that the Moon may host more than just craters. After all, if we wanted to build a permanent record of our existence for future species to find, the Moon would be an ideal location. What better monument than one placed beyond erosion, beyond time, visible to any who raise their eyes to the sky? Consider also the Moon's role as a witness. If ancient civilizations existed on Earth, if they launched even primitive spacecraft or left debris in orbit, traces of those ventures could still exist on the Moon. Crashed probes, long-eroded landers, or fragments of ancient machinery could lie buried in lunar dust, preserved forever. And if another species, not us but someone before us, achieved spaceflight millions of years ago, the Moon would keep their memory better than Earth ever could. We have barely scratched the surface of lunar exploration. Most of its terrain remains unvisited, unexamined, and unknown. What might still lie there waiting? Even without artifacts, the Moon itself poses mysteries. Its size, relative to Earth, is unusual compared to other planets and their satellites. Its composition raises questions, with isotopic similarities to Earth suggesting a violent origin. Some ancient myths speak of a time before the Moon existed, while others hint at celestial intervention. While these myths are not scientific evidence, they reflect a long-standing human intuition that the Moon is not just a rock, but a presence, one that may hold secrets about our origins and perhaps about others who came before us. Mars and the Moon together form a haunting pair. One is a world that may have once been alive, now frozen in silence, its surface etched with mysteries. The other is a dead world that preserves everything, a cosmic archive immune to time. Both invite speculation because both could so easily hold the answers to the questions Earth refuses to preserve. Were we the first to look to the stars, or were there others before us? Did they leave behind markers, signals, ruins, or whispers, hidden among the craters and valleys, waiting for us to notice? The truth is that our exploration of both worlds has barely begun. Mars has been visited by a handful of rovers, exploring tiny patches of an entire planet. The Moon has been visited by astronauts only 6 times, half a century ago, covering an area smaller than a city. What we've seen is the faintest glimpse, the first brush of curiosity against an ocean of unknowns. And already, we've found enough to stir questions, enough to fuel decades of debate. If there are deeper truths waiting, ruins, relics, or records, we haven't looked closely enough to find them. What makes this all so compelling is that unlike on Earth, the evidence might still be there. Mars's thin atmosphere has preserved ancient riverbeds, dried up lakes, and strange formations for billions of years, the moon's silence has kept every scar intact. If civilizations rose and fell long before us, or if visitors left their mark, these are the places where time could not erase them. We search Earth's rocks for whispers and anomalies, but maybe the clearest answers are written in red dust and grey regolith, waiting in plain sight. As we continue to explore Mars and return to the moon, the possibility remains that one day we may stumble upon something that changes everything. A shard, a ruin, a relic that proves we were not the first. Until then, both worlds remain mirrors of our own uncertainty, silent partners in the cosmic dance, reminding us that history may be far older, far stranger, and far more mysterious than we dare to admit. Orbiting high above our planet, where the darkness of space meets the faint blue curve of Earth, lies one of the most enduring mysteries of the modern age. It is not a star, not a planet, not even a natural moon, but a strange object whispered about for decades, a so-called Black Knight satellite. To some, it's nothing more than space junk, a misidentified piece of debris left over from human missions. To others, it is the smoking gun of a hidden truth, an artificial satellite of unknown origin, circling our world for thousands of years, a sentinel from a forgotten civilization, or perhaps even from another species entirely. Whether fact, illusion, or a carefully guarded secret, the Black Knight has become one of the most captivating enigmas of the space age. The story begins in the late 19th century, before spaceflight was even a dream. In 1899, Nikola Tesla reported receiving unusual radio signals while experimenting with his wireless transmission equipment. Tesla, always imaginative and years ahead of his time, believed these signals might not be natural. Some later claimed he was picking up transmissions from the Black Knight itself, though skeptics say he was likely detecting natural radio emissions from space. Still, the seed of mystery was planted, a sense that something was out there broadcasting to us, waiting to be noticed. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, when the world was gripped by the Cold War and the race for space. In 1954, newspapers reported that the US Air Force had detected two mysterious satellites orbiting Earth, objects that shouldn't have been there, since no nation at that time had yet launched artificial satellites. The reports were quickly dismissed, but the rumors persisted. Then, in 1960, radar tracking by the US Navy reportedly picked up a dark object in orbit. Some accounts describe it as moving in a polar orbit, something beyond the capability of the technology of that era. Once again, official explanations labeled it as a fragment of a lost satellite or simply a tracking error. Yet the whispers grew louder. The mystery truly ignited in 1998, when astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour captured a series of photographs of a strange, angular object drifting in orbit. The images released by NASA show what looks like a large, dark, asymmetrical satellite, unlike any known piece of space hardware. NASA's explanation was simple. The object was a thermal blanket, lost during a mission, floating harmlessly before eventually burning up in the atmosphere. But for many, the explanation was unsatisfying. The object's size, shape, and appearance were too distinct, too complex to be dismissed as mere debris. And so the legend of the Black Knight satellite was reborn for a new generation. Those who believe in its existence describe it as something ancient, an object that predates human spaceflight by thousands of years. They say it orbits in a way no normal satellite should, shifting unpredictably, maintaining a presence that seems purposeful. To believers, the Black Knight is either a relic of a lost earthly civilization that once achieved space travel and left behind this silent guardian, or it is an alien probe placed in orbit to monitor us. Theories range from the dramatic to the fantastic. A communication beacon, a cosmic archive, even a watchful eye, ensuring that humanity does not self-destruct before it can join a greater galactic community. Of course, skeptics have plenty to say. They argue that every aspect of the Black Knight mystery can be explained by more mundane phenomena. Tesla's signals were natural radio waves. The early Air Force reports were errors. The radar detections were misidentifications of space debris, and the shuttle photographs were indeed just a thermal blanket. To them, the Black Knight is not a mystery at all, but a myth built out of coincidences, errors, and the human tendency to weave patterns into chaos. And yet, the allure persists because the explanations always feel just a little too convenient, a little too dismissive. After all, how often do we brush aside anomalies simply because they don't fit the story we want to tell? What makes the Black Knight so fascinating is not just the object itself, but what it represents. If it truly exists, if it is truly ancient, then it is proof that humanity was not the first to step into the cosmos. It would be the ultimate relic, not carved in stone or buried under ice, but left circling above our heads for anyone with eyes to see. And if it does not exist, if it is nothing more than debris and imagination, then it still tells us something about our hunger for mystery, our deep suspicion that the official story is never the whole story. The very persistence of the legend reveals how ready we are to believe that we are not alone, and how much we yearn for proof that civilizations before us, or beyond us, have already walked this path. Consider how fragile our own satellites are. Thousands circle the Earth today, transmitting signals, relaying data, watching over us. In 100 years, many will fall back into the atmosphere and burn. In 1,000, most will be gone. But if even one were built to last, one designed to endure across eons, it could remain as a marker of our existence long after we are gone. The Black Knight, if real, may be exactly that, a deliberately placed relic meant to outlast its makers, a silent testament to a species erased by time. And here is the unsettling thought. Perhaps we already have the evidence we crave, but we don't recognize it. Perhaps the Black Knight is real, and we've already photographed it, tracked it, and studied it, only to dismiss it as junk, because we cannot imagine what it might really mean. Our reluctance to believe may be the very reason we overlook the truth, because to accept it would shatter the comforting illusion that we are the first, the only, the pinnacle. It would force us to face the reality that civilizations rise and fall, and that we may be nothing more than the next in line, destined to leave behind whispers and fragments, just like those before us. The Black Knight is not just a mystery in orbit, it is a mirror. It reflects our deepest fears and our greatest hopes. It reminds us that space is vast, that time is long, and that our place in the story of the universe may be far smaller than we think. Whether it is a piece of debris or a relic of unimaginable age, the Black Knight captures our imagination because it asks the question we cannot resist. What if we are being watched, not by gods, not by myths, but by the remnants of those who came before? And that question lingers every time we look up at the night sky. Somewhere above us, in the silent dark, drifts an object that should not exist. We may dismiss it, explain it, laugh at it, but the legend remains. The Black Knight waits, circling endlessly, a reminder that perhaps the truth about our past and our place in the cosmos is far stranger than we dare believe. If ancient civilizations once existed and vanished, how would they speak to us across the abyss of time? Stone crumbles, metal corrodes, cities vanish, but perhaps the cleverest survivors would not try to leave monuments on the surface of the Earth at all. Instead, they would hide their messages in places where erosion cannot reach, where geology cannot erase. The idea is both unsettling and brilliant. What if messages are hidden not in pyramids or lost ruins, but in the very fabric of nature itself, encoded in the rocks, in the atoms, or even in the blueprint of life? The whispers of industry, the anomalies in fossils, the nuclear enigmas all hint at the possibility of past civilizations. But what if they also tried to send us something more deliberate? A warning, a guide, or a legacy, written in a code we carry without even knowing it. The most haunting place to hide a message is inside DNA. Life on Earth is unimaginably old, stretching back billions of years. The genetic code is a constant, a universal script that every living creature carries. It is the perfect storage system, already capable of holding vast amounts of information. Today, scientists can encode entire books, films, even digital data into DNA sequences. That means it's possible, even with our technology, to embed information directly into the genome of organisms, hiding messages in junk DNA or other non-coding regions. Imagine if another civilization long before us had the same idea. They might have encoded warnings, histories, or knowledge into the DNA of life itself, trusting that it would propagate across generations, surviving catastrophes that wiped out everything else. If so, every one of us might carry their messages in our very cells, silent and unread until we develop the tools to unlock them. Consider how strange junk DNA already is. For decades, scientists called it useless, leftover fragments with no clear function. But what if some of it isn't junk at all? What if some of it is an intentional signal? a pattern waiting to be recognized, a sequence that says, "We were here, you are not the first." If civilizations before us reached a biological understanding as advanced as ours, then DNA would be the most durable time capsule imaginable. Unlike carvings in stone, unlike satellites in orbit, it has copied faithfully, generation after generation across billions of years. We might already be walking archives of the deep past without even realizing it. But DNA isn't the only place where hidden messages could lie. The universe itself may carry imprints that act as communication. Physics is full of constants, numbers that describe the speed of light, the strength of gravity, the structure of atoms. Some theorists have suggested that if a civilization wanted to leave a message for any future intelligence, they could embed it in the mathematical fabric of the universe, because those constants will never change. For example, anomalies in the ratios of particles or unexplained patterns in cosmic background radiation might be more than accidents. They could be intentional markers, like graffiti scrawled across the stars, evidence left not for contemporaries, but for the far future. If civilizations rose and fell on Earth long before us, they might have left their echoes not just in geology, but in physics. Closer to home, there are myths and legends that sound suspiciously like echoes of something older. Stories of great floods, of gods who descended from the sky, of knowledge gifted to humanity and then lost. These recur in cultures around the world, separated by oceans and millennia. Are they just archetypes, stories born of the human psyche, or are they fragments of memory, distorted through countless retellings of a civilization that once existed and tried to warn its successors? If myths are echoes, they may be another kind of hidden message, encoded not in DNA or physics, but in culture, passed forward in stories rather than stone. Even artifacts we dismiss might carry hidden signals. The pyramids of Egypt, the megaliths of South America, the stone circles of Europe. Mainstream archaeology explains them as cultural achievements of early humans, which they surely were, but some argue they also encode astronomical alignments, messages about the stars, cycles, and cataclysms. If an earlier civilization had lived through global disasters, they may have encoded their warnings in monuments designed to survive. Alignments with solstices, with Orion, with the Pleiades, might not be superstition, but science, a way of saying, watch the skies, the cycle comes again. We often dismiss these as ritualistic, but what if they are messages disguised as myth? Another possibility is that hidden messages might not be meant for us at all, but for the next civilization after us. Imagine if we collapse, leaving behind only fragments. Our nuclear waste sites already carry warnings designed to last 10,000 years, messages engraved into stone and metal to say, do not dig here. We know language erodes, symbols lose meaning, but we try anyway, carving warnings into a future we cannot imagine. If we are doing this now, is it so strange to think someone else may have done it before? The problem is, their warnings might look like nothing more than strange patterns in DNA, unusual anomalies in rocks or myths we take as stories. The messages might be there, but we don't yet know how to read them. And then comes the darkest possibility. What if the messages are warnings, and we are ignoring them? What if the anomalies in the fossil record, the strange spikes of carbon, the unexplained isotopes are all screaming at us that civilizations have risen and fallen before, destroyed themselves in ways eerily similar to what we are doing now? The message may already be decoded, and it says only this: do not repeat our mistake. But we are repeating it anyway, burning through resources, warming the planet, flirting with extinction. Maybe the message isn't hidden at all. Maybe it is written plainly in the cycles of history, and we refuse to believe it because the implications are too uncomfortable. Whether embedded in DNA, etched into physics, preserved in myth, or whispered in anomalies, the concept of hidden messages from the past forces us to rethink our assumptions. We imagine ourselves as pioneers, as the first to step into knowledge, but what if we are simply the latest to rediscover it? What if every leap we celebrate has been leapt before by hands and minds long erased? The real mystery may not be whether messages exist, but whether we are capable of recognizing them. Perhaps we have already seen them, dismissed them, or mistaken them for natural curiosity. Perhaps the greatest secret of the human story is not that we are alone, but that we are surrounded by the faint echoes of those who came before us, hidden in plain sight. The unsettling part is that hidden messages may not only exist, they may already be working. If DNA carries information, if myths carry warnings, If anomalies carry patterns, then we are already being whispered to, nudged by the past toward recognition. Whether we listen is another question, because the most terrifying outcome is not that there are no messages, it's that there are, and we are ignoring them, marching forward blind, repeating the cycle while the past screams silently for us to pay attention. When we look at the rise and fall of civilizations throughout history, a chilling pattern begins to emerge. Again and again, humanity builds something extraordinary, only to watch it unravel. Empires rise, empires fall, and in their ruins we find warnings that feel uncomfortably familiar. But what if this cycle of collapse isn't just human history, it's planetary history? What if this same rhythm has played out countless times, across epochs, with civilizations that existed long before ours? The pattern of collapse may not just be a quirk of our species, but a universal truth, an echo of destiny, written into the fabric of intelligent life itself. Consider the ancient civilizations we do know. The Roman Empire stretched across Europe, Africa, and Asia, a network of roads, aqueducts, and cities that seemed unstoppable. Yet in the end, it fractured under its own weight. Economic strain, political corruption, invasions, and environmental shifts eroded its foundation, until it collapsed. The Maya built sprawling cities in the jungles of Central America, their pyramids rising above the trees, their astronomy and mathematics remarkably advanced. And then suddenly their cities were abandoned. Climate stress, resource exhaustion, and internal conflict are thought to have played their roles. The Indus Valley civilization, with its intricate urban planning, sanitation systems, and trade networks, also fell into silence, leaving behind ruins that still puzzle archaeologists. These are only a few examples, but they all share the same haunting rhythm: growth, brilliance, decline, collapse. The more we study history, the more we see collapse not as an exception but as the rule. Civilizations are fragile, vulnerable to the very forces they unleash. They harness energy, expand populations, exhaust resources, and eventually overreach. Collapse is not always sudden. It can take centuries, but the end result is the same. What was once a thriving world becomes ruins and whispers, with only fragments left to tell the story. This repeating cycle begs a question that cuts deeper than we like to admit. If every civilization eventually collapses, what makes us think we are different? Now stretch that pattern further back, beyond recorded history, into the deep time of Earth. Imagine civilizations that rose millions of years ago, before the ice ages, before the continents shifted to their current places, before our species even existed. If the pattern holds true, then they too would have risen, flourished, and fallen, leaving behind little more than chemical scars, isotopic anomalies, and puzzling fossils. Just as we study the ruins of Rome or the Maya, someone in the far future might study the ruins of our skyscrapers and dams. But beyond that, civilizations from even further back might be unrecognizable, erased entirely except for faint whispers in the geological record. What's more unsettling is how eerily our own era mirrors the warning signs of collapse. Climate change, driven by our own industrial activity, echoes ancient patterns of environmental stress that brought down societies before us. Resource depletion is a constant thread, whether it was the forests that the Easter Islanders cut down, the soils that the Sumerians salted through irrigation, or the fossil fuels we are burning today. Each society pushed its environment past a tipping point. Each believed itself invincible until it wasn't. The echoes are too sharp to ignore. We may be living inside the same cycle, only on a larger global scale. Even the psychological dimension of collapse is predictable. Civilizations in decline rarely admit their fragility. Instead, they double down, clinging to growth, blind to the warning signs. Elites protect their own wealth and power, believing they can escape the collapse that swallows everyone else. Cultural narratives reinforce the illusion of permanence, convincing people that the system cannot fail until it does. This arrogance is not unique to us. It is the hubris of civilization itself. If advanced societies existed millions of years ago, it is easy to imagine they fell victim to the same blindness. They too might have built their empires, burned through their resources, and dismissed the signs until it was too late. History also shows us that collapse is not always total. Knowledge can survive, carried forward in fragments. After the fall of Rome, much of its wisdom was lost in Europe, but preserved in the Islamic world. After the fall of the Maya, descendants still carried their language and traditions. Collapse does not mean extinction. It means transformation, a break in continuity, a resetting of the clock. But in deep time, continuity is almost impossible. Civilizations, separated by millions of years, would not know of each other. They would not inherit libraries or ruins. They would begin again, from scratch, each one believing it was the first. This idea that collapse is not just a possibility but an inevitability casts a shadow on our own future. We like to believe we are unique, that our technology, our science, our global networks will protect us from the fate of past societies. Yet our very technology may be the thing that ensures collapse comes faster and harder. Nuclear weapons, climate-altering emissions, artificial intelligence, and bioengineering. Each is a power capable of reshaping the planet. Each carries risks that could tip us over the edge. And if collapse comes, what will be left of us? Ruins that vanish in a few thousand years, plastics that fossilize, isotopes that whisper of fission, and chemical scars etched into stone. To future eyes, we will look like nothing more than another civilization that rose, burned brightly and fell, leaving behind anomalies for others to puzzle over. The unsettling part of the pattern of collapse is how familiar it feels. It is not just history, it is prophecy. The same warning signs repeat, the same hubris, the same blind march into fragility. If civilizations before us fell into the same cycle, then we are simply the next verse in an old song. The fossil gaps, the nuclear enigmas, the industrial ghosts, all could be the remains of past collapses, each one leaving behind only fragments before vanishing into silence. If so, then Earth itself may be a graveyard of forgotten civilizations, each one erased by time but still faintly visible in the scars of the planet. And yet, collapse is not the end of the story. Each collapse is also an opening, a chance for renewal. Out of the ruins, new cultures rise, new species flourish, and the cycle begins again. Perhaps that is why life continues, why intelligence re-emerges, but the haunting possibility is that no civilization has yet escaped the cycle. That collapse is not just common, but inevitable. That every society, no matter how advanced, eventually consumes itself and leaves behind only whisper. And if that is true, then the only real question is whether we will be the first to break the cycle or just the next to repeat it. When people talk about the possibility of lost civilizations or ancient worlds erased by time, it's tempting to treat them as distant echoes, stories that belong to the far reaches of history or even prehistory. But the unsettling truth is that the mirror we're searching for is not buried deep in the past. It's staring right back at us in the present. Every sign, every warning, every shadow of collapse we've traced through the ages can be seen today, playing out in real time. The idea that civilizations rise and fall isn't just an abstract theory. It's a pattern we are currently living through, a cycle unfolding right before our eyes. The past is not gone. It's reflected in us, in our cities, in our choices, in the way we are hurtling toward the same outcomes that erased those who came before. Look at the world we've built. We've connected the globe with satellites, airplanes, and fiber optic cables. We've harnessed energy on a scale no previous society could imagine. We've reshaped landscapes, redirected rivers, and drilled into the earth for fuel. To us, it feels unstoppable, as though technology itself guarantees our permanence. But doesn't that sound eerily like the hubris of Rome before it fell, or the Maya before they abandoned their cities, or the Easter Islanders before their forests were gone? The confidence that nothing could undo them was exactly what made their unraveling so swift when the pressure mounted. And now in the present, we see the same illusion of invulnerability reflected in ourselves. We tell ourselves collapse cannot happen again, not with our modern tool, but history suggests that very confidence is the first step toward the fall. Climate change is the clearest mirror of past collapses. Just as ancient societies strained their environments until they broke, we are heating our planet at a rate unseen in millions of years. Oceans rise, storms intensify, ice caps melt, and ecosystems strain under pressure. Scientists warn of tipping points, moments when the system flips irreversibly into a new state. Past civilizations collapsed when their agricultural systems failed, when the rain stopped, when drought or flood destroyed their balance. Today, our global system is bigger, but also more fragile, dependent on predictable climate patterns that are now breaking down. The same forces that erased cultures before are unfolding again, only magnified on a planetary scale. Resource depletion tells the same story. Oil fields that once gushed are now harder to tap. Freshwater aquifers are being drained faster than they can replenish. Fish stocks collapse from overfishing. Forests are burned. Soils are exhausted. Minerals are stripped from the earth. Every ancient collapse had its roots in the unsustainable use of resources, from deforestation in the Mediterranean to soil exhaustion in Mesopotamia. We mirror them almost perfectly, only this time the consumption is global. Our technology allows us to push limits further, but that only means the crash, when it comes, will be harder. The present reflects the past in this eerie way, the same story just written on a bigger canvas. Even in politics and society, the mirror is uncomfortably clear. Civilizations nearing collapse often show growing inequality. Where wealth pools at the top while ordinary people struggle, elites shield themselves from the consequences, convinced they can escape the unraveling, but in the end they fall with everyone else. In our time, the divide between rich and poor grows sharper, global systems fracture, and trust in institutions erodes. Social unrest spreads like cracks in a foundation. This isn't new. The Romans saw it, the Maya saw it, countless cultures before us saw it, and each time, the refusal to act in unity sped the collapse. If we are their reflection, then our trajectory is not unique. It is familiar, and it is dangerous. Technology itself is a mirror. We think of it as salvation, but past societies also thought their advances would save them. The Romans built aqueducts, roads, and engineering marvels, believing them to be eternal. The Maya built astronomical observatories and irrigation systems that seemed to secure their survival. Yet those very achievements depended on fragile systems that collapsed when stresses mounted. Today, our digital networks, satellites, and global supply chains give us the same illusion of permanence. But imagine a disruption. Cyber attacks, solar storms, or systemic collapse could unravel everything overnight. We are more connected than ever, but that very connection makes us more vulnerable. One break in the chain ripples through the entire system, much like a single drought rippled through Mayan agriculture, until their society fractured. The mirror shows us that what feels like strength may actually be fragility disguised as progress. Even our waste is a reflection of civilizations before us. We've already left behind layers of plastic, concrete, and chemical signatures in the geological record. Millions of years from now, these will form a distinct technofossil layer, just as isotopic anomalies suggest industrial activity in the deep past. We look at their mysterious traces and wonder if they lived before us, while future beings may look at ours and wonder the same. The symmetry is chilling. We see their faint whispers and don't believe them, and perhaps our whispers will be dismissed in the same way. The present and the past blur together in this mirror, each generation convinced it is unique while leaving behind the same enigmatic scar. What makes this mirror so unnerving is how quickly it shifts from abstract theory to immediate reality. We can no longer say collapse is something that happened to others. We see it unfolding in slow motion now. Forests burn uncontrollably. Species vanish daily. Glaciers retreat faster than models predicted. Cities struggle under floods, heat waves, and rising seas. Supply chains wobble, economies tremble, and conflicts flare. It feels like chaos, but it's not new. It's the same rhythm that played out in every ancient collapse, the same pattern written in ruins across the world. The mirror simply shows us that we are part of the same story, repeating the same mistakes on a larger scale. The haunting part is that, just like those before us, we don't want to look in the mirror. We prefer the illusion that we are different, that we can innovate our way out, that collapse cannot touch us. And maybe that's true. Maybe technology will break the cycle this time, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Each innovation brings new risks, new dependencies, new vulnerabilities. We build faster, consume more, and destabilize systems at unprecedented speeds. The cycle doesn't stop, it accelerates. The mirror reflects a countdown, and we are running out of time to pretend it's not there. And yet, there is a strange kind of comfort in the mirror too. If collapse is a universal rhythm, then survival is also part of the pattern. After every collapse, new societies rose. After every failure, life found a way forward. The mirror shows us fragility, but it also shows resilience. We may fall, but something will rise from the ruins. Perhaps that is the deeper message of the mirror. Not that collapse is the end, but that it is a transformation, a resetting of the stage, Civilizations may vanish, but the story continues, written by those who come next. Still, when we look closely, the reflection is unavoidable. We are the past, and the past is us. Their mistakes are our mistakes. Their hubris is our hubris. Their collapse is foreshadowed in our headlines. The present is not separate from the long arc of history. It is the latest chapter, written with the same ink. The only real question is whether we will recognize ourselves in the mirror, or whether we will look away until the reflection becomes ruins. Because if history has taught us anything, it's this: the mirror never lies, but civilizations always do. The future is often imagined as a place of limitless possibility, a canvas waiting to be filled with the brilliance of human progress. We dream of colonizing other planets, harnessing the power of the stars, and building technologies that free us from scarcity. But there is another way to think about the future, one that is less hopeful and far more haunting. Instead of seeing it as something we are rushing toward, what if the future is also something rushing toward us, echoing patterns that have already played out countless times before? What if the future we imagine is not original at all, but an echo of futures already lived and lost by civilizations long erased? This is the unsettling idea of future echoes, the possibility that the destiny we anticipate has already unfolded, again and again, leaving only faint traces for us to stumble upon before we follow the same path. When we look at our own trajectory, the echoes are already there. Our talk of colonizing Mars or building space stations feels new. Yet if earlier civilizations had the capacity for technology, even in forms unrecognizable to us, why wouldn't they have reached for the stars too? If they did, their echoes might still orbit above us, embedded in the myths of sky gods or preserved as enigmatic objects like the Black Knight satellite. Even if those ventures collapsed, their dreams may still reverberate in ours, as though the ambition itself is part of the cycle. Perhaps civilizations always reach a point where they look up, attempt to break free, and then falter. The future we imagine, expansion into space, might simply be the same milestone every advanced society hits before collapse reclaims them. Technology provides the clearest echo. Every innovation we celebrate feels revolutionary, but each also mirrors an ancient rhythm: discovery, exploitation, dependency, and eventual downfall. Fire, agriculture, industry, digital networks. They all transform societies, but they also set the stage for fragility. If civilizations before us developed their own technologies, whether harnessing forms of energy we haven't rediscovered yet, or manipulating biology in ways we only now approach, they too may have believed their progress ensured survival. Yet the echoes suggest otherwise. Just as fire can warm or burn, just as industry can build or collapse ecosystems, technology carries within it both salvation and destruction. The future we imagine, one where technology saves us, may simply be an echo of a hope countless others before us also clung to, only to learn that progress has a breaking point. There are darker echoes too. Nuclear weapons are often seen as humanity's unique invention, a destructive power that could erase civilization in a day. But the isotopic anomalies in Earth's geological record raise the possibility that such power has been unleashed before. If another society discovered nuclear fission millions of years ago, their echoes are buried in the soil's strange ratios of isotopes, unexplained spikes in radiation, whispers of atomic fire. That suggests a chilling truth. The future we fear, a future where we destroy ourselves with our own weapons, may not be a hypothetical. It may be a memory of a fate already suffered by those before us. Every time we discuss the end of the world, we may simply be tuning into an echo that repeats across ages, a warning that collapse often comes not from outside, but from within. Yet echoes are not only destructive, they also reveal resilience. Every collapse leaves behind survivors, fragments of knowledge, seeds of continuity. The echoes of lost civilizations may have guided humanity in ways we don't even recognize. Ancient myths, strange monuments, and unexplained knowledge might not be coincidences, but deliberate gifts, echoes designed to carry forward. Perhaps our future innovations too will leave echoes for those who come after us. Even if our civilization falls, the idea that the future is an echo reframes our ambition. What we build may not endure forever, but fragments of it might ripple forward, just as fragments of others ripple into our present. The most haunting form of future echoes, though, may not be physical artifacts at all, but cycles written into consciousness. Why do humans across cultures imagine apocalypses? Why do stories of floods, fiery destruction and rebirth appear everywhere. It may be because the memory of collapse is so deep, so universal, that it echoes through myth and culture across millennia. If this is true, then our visions of the future, whether utopian or catastrophic, are not predictions but memories, echoes of what has already happened to others. When we dream of paradise, we are recalling what others built and lost. When we fear apocalypse, we are remembering the endings that have already unfolded. The future is not ahead of us, it is behind us, echoing forth. Consider also how the universe itself might carry these echoes. Astronomers search for extraterrestrial signals, expecting clear transmission. But what if the real signals are not messages but patterns? Anomalies in cosmic radiation, unusual stellar activity, strange artifacts in orbit that are actually echoes of civilizations that have already risen and fallen across the galaxy. The so-called Great Silence may not be silence at all, but the fading echoes of countless voices drowned out by time. In that sense, our own future echo is already written. One day, our signals will fade too, leaving only faint traces for others to puzzle over. We may already be participating in the same cycle we suspect of Earth civilizations: flare briefly, echo faintly, and then vanish, leaving behind mysteries mistaken for noise. In this light, the idea of future echoes is both terrifying and humbling. It suggests that the destiny of civilizations is not linear progress, but recurrence. Each rises, each believes it is unique, each falls, and each leaves behind echoes that shape those who come after. We are not inventing the future, we are rediscovering it, replaying it, reliving it. The future is not original. It is a reflection, a resonance, a chorus of voices from civilizations long forgotten. But here is the possibility that gives the idea its edge. If echoes are real, then perhaps they are not only warnings but opportunities. If the future is an echo, then perhaps by listening closely, we can break the pattern. We can recognize the signs not as inevitabilities, but as choices. We can learn from the collapse of others, even if they are only faintly visible in anomalies and myths. The echoes may not condemn us, they may guide us. The question is whether we are willing to listen, or whether, like every civilization before us, we will dismiss the warnings as noise, until the cycle claims us too. Ultimately, the idea of future echoes forces us to reconsider time itself. We imagine history as a line, moving forward into something new. But what if it is a spiral, repeating rhythms at higher scales, each echoing the last? What if our present is the past of another, our future the reflection of someone else's memory? That would mean the future is not unknowable at all. It is already written, already whispered in the stones, the DNA, the myths, the anomalies. We are not blind, we are simply deaf to the echoes. And if we could finally hear them, we might realize the future we fear, the future we dream of, has already happened before, and may happen again. In the end, the question of whether civilizations existed before us is less about hard proof and more about patterns, echoes, and the haunting silence of time. We dig through ruins, study anomalies, and puzzle over myths, but what we are really searching for is ourselves, our own reflection stretched across history. Every mystery, from the strange scars in the Earth's rocks to the whispered legends of floods and sky gods, reminds us that the story of life on this planet is far older, far stranger than anything written in our textbooks. Whether the traces are real artifacts of forgotten civilizations or simply natural coincidences, the effect on us is the same. They unsettle the illusion that we are the first or the only to stand at the edge of greatness. What makes this possibility so powerful is not that it proves we are doomed, but that it forces us to confront how fragile civilization truly is. The cycle of rise and fall is everywhere in history. It is written in the ruins of Rome, in the abandoned cities of the Maya, in the silence of cultures that once thrived. If the cycle stretches deeper into prehistory, then we are only the latest verse in a song that has been playing for millions of years. The terrifying part is how familiar the notes sound: environmental collapse, overconsumption, inequality, arrogance. These aren't just ancient mistakes, they're headlines today. And if civilizations before us followed the same path, then the mirror they hold up is clear. The story ends the same way, unless we change the script. But perhaps that is the most important lesson. If traces of lost civilizations truly exist, then they are not just curiosities, they are messages. Maybe they were never meant to prove themselves beyond doubt. Maybe they were meant to whisper faintly, "We were here, we made the same choices, learn from us." The whispers could be buried in DNA, carved in stone, etched into myths, or orbiting silently above our heads. The challenge is whether we can hear them before it's too late, ignoring them, dismissing them, repeating the cycle that is the mistake every civilization makes. And it may be the mistake that finally erases us too. Still, there is a strange kind of hope in this possibility. If civilizations rise and fall, then collapse is not the end. It is a transformation. Something always survives. Something always carries forward, whether it's fragments of knowledge, stories woven into myth, or traces buried in the earth. The fact that we are here at all may be proof that the cycle itself ensures continuity. Life persists. Intelligence returns. The story is never over. It only shifts to new voices, and maybe that means we are not alone in the cosmos. Not because others are alive now, but because their echoes surround us, reminding us that the universe is filled with beginnings and endings, each one a mirror of our own. So as we look to the stars and dream of the future, we should also look inward and backward. The past is not gone. It lives in our present, reflected in our choices, whispering in our myths, carved into our planet's bones. Whether those whispers are truly from lost civilizations or simply from the cycle of nature itself, the lesson is the same. Nothing is permanent, and everything we build is fragile. But within that fragility lies a chance to be the first to break the cycle, to listen to the warnings, to make choices that lead somewhere new. Because maybe the echoes are not just reminders of what has been lost, they are also invitations to finally change what comes next. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all, not whether they were here before us, but whether we will last long enough to leave echoes of our own.